I'm Nat and I make booktube videos sort of and this video is actually a great comeback to the booktube content I've been wanting to make for a very long time. This video I'll be going through my July and August wrap-ups, the books I've read during that period of time, and some of my current reads and some of my TBRs as well. I know that people tend to do them separately, but because I think that going through some of the themes in my reading journey are really important, so I am choosing to put them all in this one video, and I'll try to be as fast as I can. Yeah, so I just want to go by the theme of first general, and then second natural history or environment, and then third would be Singapore specific stuff. I mean, there are going to be some overlaps with the second and third category, but for the first category I think it's pretty simple. It is this book called You're Not Listening by Kate Murphy, and this is a very simple book. I think it's quite easy reading, so I would recommend this for non-fic in general, or for people who might be new to reading non-fic. It's not just like listening, but rather like how important is listening in our lives. And I think this was a very good point of reflection in my own life, where I was really like rethinking everything I knew about interpersonal relationships, and this book really helped in that, you know, that the act of listening is a very deliberate attempt, and that you should be okay with really being able to tell, like, are you listening? Is the person that you're with listening to you? And what is a sincere two-way exchange between someone who is talking and someone who's listening? It is very straightforward. The language is very easy to read. So highly recommended for a more simple non-fic reading, and I think it's great as a refresher to remind you that it's really the simple things in life that we often neglect or we forget about. So that's great. The second book that I want to share is actually in my ebook, which I can't show you. And I can't show you the book, but it's called Untamed by Glennon Doyle. And I think initially I would categorize this as a general non-fic, because it's really about the author's own journey into her own unlearning. And I think the title Untamed is a very interesting concept to think about. I think the idea of unlearning is very, very buzzworthy today. Many people are talking about unlearning their own prejudices, their own biases, their own privileges. There's so much unlearning that's happening, and that's great. I think it is a good movement to be unlearning all these things that we often neglect in our lives, and most of social change comes from that first step in changing your own self. I think prior to this I was reading Pleasure Activism, and that was a great book talking about how it really stems from a self-awareness and a self-love that would then move on to other people. By itself, I can understand why the book has so many bad reviews on Goodreads. I feel kind of bad about it because Glennon Doyle, like, she writes in a way that's a bit self-help. I think the act of reading is really about understanding where the author is placed in their context, in their position, and how you yourself want to relate to the author's reading. So while there are many things about her that scream like white feminism, I never found her tone to be exclusive in that manner. I did find her efforts to build a queer family after her own heteronormative family fell apart was very like applaudable. I think that's a great effort on her part, and the way that she tries so hard to be a conscious parent, and how she tries to empower her children and to really reach out to her readers. I think that's really great to listen, isn't to read. I think that's a great mindset to have as an author. So I really appreciated that. And there's some moments where it was quite touching, which is rare for me because I don't really read like memoirs or autobiographies, so I liked it. But I think one of the reasons why I enjoyed it so much was because it was at a time in my life where I was really thinking about what it meant to be unlearning and untaming myself. So I think that's why I had a lot of benefit from this book. If I was reading this book like last year, I don't think it would have had the same effect. So take it as you will. Yeah, so that is the second book of the general non-fic side. So moving on to the categories, which is natural history and environment, as well as Singapore. The first book I want to talk about is Eating Chili Crab in the Anthropocene. I realize that the two categories now are quite intertwined, but let me assure you that there are two separate threads. So the first one is Chili Crab in the Anthropocene, and it's a collection of essays by a lot of young people in Singapore about climate change, and like it's a great book, like a great starter book, an introduction to the themes that are pressing in Singapore, things like the oil industry, where our food supplies are from. These ideas are great to be introduced to the public through this book. So if you're in Singapore, I highly suggest that you pick up this book. I think it's available in the library, or you can buy it online as well. And I urge you, after reading this book, not just to take it as it is, but to go into the footnotes or the references of these essays and to read up accordingly, or to explore a topic further in detail. Because I think that while this is a great introductory book, it is just that, like it is a very brief understanding of the big ideas in Singapore, and it's not like everything, so you really have to go and learn more if you are interested. Because of that, I picked up this book called Imperial Creatures, by Timothy Barnard, Humans and Other Animals in Colonial Singapore, 1819 to 1942. And Timothy Barnard is a pretty well-known researcher, I think, in Singapore, that does a lot of research on the natural history of Singapore. Natural history being like the environment, and more of like the human to animal and to environment relations. And this is an academic book, so there's like footnotes and there's some diagrams, but I really enjoyed it, although it does get draggy at some points, because it is an academic book. It is about archival work, history work, and I have never really read history stuff prior to last year, but I realized that there's so much to learn and that I really have to plow through, because every time you want to learn about something, you really have to learn like the root and the fundamentals of it. There's no point like reading just like very simple 5-minute articles online when you really can reach books like this and to learn so much more about like the whole picture. There's this notion that the colonizing project was really a way of controlling nature and sort of taming nature into a kind of beneficial form for humans to take advantage of. And now you understand that this taming concept is another theme that I picked up on while reading these books. Reading Glennon Doyle's Untamed, I made very surprising connections to this book as well, because it is about taming animals. But in taming animals, there's also a taming of socio-economic classes. There's a taming of the colonizers and the colonized. There is a kind of taming of the natural environment, but also the taming of what was civilization before the colonizers came to Singapore. I think that's a very surprising connection I made there. But I think that was like a light bulb moment for me, in which like nature, like we have tamed nature. Like, is it really human nature to want to tame things and to assert control over things as a sign of modernity, as a sign of progress? And on the theme of Singapore and history, and now moving on more to Singapore, there's this book I have read, which is called Siapa nama Kamu, which is a collection highlight of the exhibition held by the National Gallery Singapore. It highlights art in Singapore since the 19th century. And this book, this exhibition, tried to answer like what is Singaporean art, who are the local artists that have shaped our cultural identity today. And the title is Malay for Siapa is Malay for what is your name. And I have been thinking about this for very long, which is that what is Singapore's identity? Where is our roots? What does it mean to be situated in this region that speaks mostly Bahasa Melayu or Bahasa Indonesia, and that we are English speaking and majority Chinese? What does that mean for our cultural identity? And like, it's crazy because I think there's so much about the Singapore narrative that we have to unpack. So I highly recommend this book as an easy way to think about the art trajectory of Singapore, but this is also just a sampler. There's so much more work that isn't in here. Think about what works are included and excluded. But I think this is a great book to pick up if you're in the library, or if you want to check out exhibitions from museums that you haven't been able to check out. Yeah, and I think it's just really nice to have a break from words, like to look at the pictures and to think about what motivated the artist to produce those pictures, to produce those artworks at that time. So like I mentioned earlier on, there's this question of taming and untaming, and I've been thinking a lot about it in relation to the environment as well. And so that's why I am reading this book called The Botany of Desire by Michael Pollan. I'm reading it as an ebook on my phone, so I don't have a physical copy. But the author makes a very interesting premise, and he questions where is the agency of plants in our life? And we talk about natural extinctions, we talk about how human civilization is sort of destroying nature, but this author is trying to question that a little bit by saying, like, what if the plants have tamed us? What if the plants have domesticated humans, and it's a two-way relationship versus just a one-way relationship? And he looks at this through some of the very popular, not say popular, but important plants today, such as the apple tree, the potato, the tulip, I think. And he argues that there are certain traits of these plants that have successfully enticed us as humans to continue cultivating them, and to continue to make sure that they continue existing, having progeny and so forth. And I thought that's a very interesting premise, because it is true that I mean, it is true that domestication, we often think of it as a one-sided thing, like humans civilize others, humans tame others. But actually, there is a two-way thing, much as dogs have been tamed by us. But a lot of times, humans adjust greatly to give these dogs a very comfortable life. So what does that make us, I do have a lot more TBRs that are sort of tangential to these themes, but I will post an update about those books in the future and see what other themes come up in my life. But I hope you have enjoyed this video. Reading these books and creating connections between them that I myself did not expect was really fun and satisfying. I highly encourage you to do that, to think about what other themes are prevalent in your life right now that show through the books that you've picked up, and show through the connections that you've made. That's all from me. Next video, you might be seeing me do other themes completely, or continuing the themes that I've talked about today. So yeah, I know it's a pretty long video. I don't know how to organize this because there's just so many books. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I hope to show you more of my books in the future as well. So cool, thanks for hanging out, and let me know if this format works for you. If not, I might just stick to the usual monthly wrap-ups, but I'm kind of not feeling that, but okay. So yeah, thanks, and see you next time.